I was like, here's the thing. There's obviously some interest. They came back at another price, still not what we're looking for. Let's just reject, or let's just counter, even if it's $5,000. Like at the end of the day, would you take $5,000 less? And he said yes. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's just counter that. They'll see that we're not in this $25,000 boat, right? Well, lo and behold, in the meantime, another showing comes in. Guess what? We're in counters now, right? So another showing, they now know that there's another offer on the table. So guess what? We end up in a multiple counter situation.
Welcome to the Leading Lane podcast for real estate pros by real estate pros with your hosts, Ashley Frederick and Stephen Birch. If you're looking for an honest, authentic, and raw perspective, you found it.
Welcome, everyone, back to the Leading Lane podcast. Thank you for joining us once again. So, interesting topic, as I've had a couple of things happen in this weird market that we're in right now. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to talk about if you let a transaction more or less like die in your hand, kind of the way that I always say it. So I have always said that I don't want to have a transaction die in my hands. I will leave it to someone else. And I heard another interesting story, and I think I have like an interesting story as of recent to relate as to why you don't. Now, will I say that there are times that you should just reject an offer? I mean, there are some times that maybe we're just so far apart that it is unrealistic. But, this relates back to probably, 10 years ago when we would write offers like $60,000 off of asking, and people would reject, but also people would just counter, and then lo and behold, they'd come to an agreement. So what are your thoughts about when you get a lowball offer and you're representing the seller, or you get a counter back when you're representing the buyer, and your buyer's like, but let's just reject and walk away?
So I think like back in the day, right? Like I'd be like, yeah, let's reject it. Let's not even mess with it. But I think that's what everybody else, that's the easy button to be able to do it. And I think that also, with that being said, there's agents put their ego in that. And so once I figured out that agents are putting their ego in it and they're trying to lowball because of me or whatever the reasoning behind it is, right? It's almost like killing them with kindness, right? They're coming back with like, cool, like I'll match your energy. And even if I now want to do a counter offer of full price or where we're at, what these terms are. And I think that it's a power play of being able to stand firm of what your true non-negotiables are or what you're not willing to come off of. But once they start coming back on those offers, even if it's a little bit, you can start identifying the variables that are important to the other party. So it's easier to start, wedging down into it. What is the real reason why we're trying to play hardball? What is the motivating factor? Is it really the price, or is it really the closing cost or closing date, whatever it is? But if I'm the one that completely rejects it, I don't get to learn about where that other person is from their side. So I think it's a stance of a learning opportunity. And if it's not going to go anywhere after you counter, it's not going anywhere when you reject it. So what does it matter?
Right. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in a transaction a seller wanted to reject. Yeah. I mean, because it's also an emotional transaction for the seller, right? So they're offended and they just want to reject. And there are so many times that I just literally was like, I don't care if we counter at asking.
Yes.
We just counter. And, it's just amazing how many times like maybe that seller or that buyer comes back with something more realistic, right? They were testing the waters. So that obviously didn't go well for them. Now they've seen that the seller isn't willing to negotiate on much, but now they've come back with maybe they were, originally $20,000 off and now they're $5,000 off. Can we now have a discussion where, so many other agents, I think, are just, again, they put their own emotions into it. They let their seller's emotions get into it. And then they just reject it and the transaction's over. I'm just thankful that my sellers are trusting me that I don't care. I know it's going to take you 5 minutes to sign this piece of paper. Let's just do it. And how many transactions have actually come together? I mean, significant amounts of transaction. I think that's one difference between, agents that are willing to put that extra effort in to take the 5 minutes to do a counter offer, and the ones that I feel like are somewhat lazy and just want the easy button of, nope, we're done. Like, is that really in the seller's best interest that you're not even trying a little bit more?
No, not at all. Like, and also too, like I think that people were so focused on the negotiation between buyer and seller. Let me see if I can frame this properly to make sense. I personally think the real negotiation starts with me and my seller, or me and my buyer, whoever I'm representing, right? So I think there's two different sides of the negotiation coin here. It's your client that you, with the you and the you as the agent and your client, and then when you get a co-op deal, the other agent and their client, and then now how do we marry all of that together, because you get to be able to see truly both sides of the coin, and understanding what are the motivating factors for the seller, because they are emotional, because they are offended or whatever. They may not see that some of these aspects may work in their favor with what their goals are, and they're blinded because of the rejection or their being so offended. So I try to negotiate with my client first, of understanding where they're at, if that makes sense. Then let's bring in the co-op side.
I think it's even something that could be part of your actual listing presentation or the first time you're meeting with the seller, right? Like these are the things you're explaining to them and why you're different to work with,
Right.
is that I'm going to be honest with you. Like, hey, we might get a lowball offer. Don't take it to offense. We're just going to counter. So I had one not too long ago, and I think this is where it also comes into play as to why you do counters, and especially in this market, because this market is so interesting right now. It's either like things are moving, they're not moving. It's so strange depending on the price point that you're in, at least in our area. And somebody wrote a very, very low offer. It was messy. The other agent, messy, whatever. I don't normally say reject, but it seemed like there was no common ground for whatever reason. So sometimes I think, if it's the right place, like a rejection can also wake up that buyer like, oh, that might have been a little too far off the boat. So we rejected, and I did just say, like, this is just on the extremes. If they want to come back with something a little bit more realistic, we're happy to entertain. So I think it was like 2 days later, they countered, and they came back with something still like not even in the boat, right? But I said, and the seller wanted to reject again, and I was like, here's the thing. There's obviously some interest. They came back at another price, still not what we're looking for. Let's just reject, or let's just counter, even if it's $5,000. Like at the end of the day, would you take $5,000 less? And he said yes. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's just counter that. They'll see that we're not in this $25,000 boat, right? Well, lo and behold, in the meantime, another showing comes in. Guess what? We're in counters now, right? So another showing, they now know that there's another offer on the table. So guess what? We end up in a multiple counter situation. Nobody knows how far apart we were on the other terms, right? Maybe we're $20,000 apart on one and 10 on the other, but neither party knows that. All they know is that they're being multiple countered. So sure enough, they got an accepted offer, 5,000 off of asking when it started, originally at like 40. So that time that you bought, right, with them being in counters, multiple counters, played in their favor. Had you just rejected it, not done anything with it, and a new offer came in, there was no advantage of having another offer to play against them. So that is one prime example of how just countering them, even though we were so far apart, ended up in their favor when another offer came in.
Well, I mean, there's no sense of urgency, right? Like now, because they think that, oh, the market's slower or whatever their rationale is, right? Like now that they physically see that they potentially could be losing out and somebody else could be winning, that brings a little bit more of the urgency factor to it, and let's jump on it before somebody else can take it. Absolutely. Like, but you're totally right. If you didn't take that opportunity, you wouldn't have had that leverage to be able to position it that way, and making the other party see how far they were truly, or how wackadoodle they were acting, right? Being that far under. But, and, even with that being said, like we had an example here that we had some land that sat on the market for about a year, and another agent called and basically was like, hey, like this is a lowball offer, like we don't even want to write it up if they're not even going to entertain it, like but I'm just reaching out. And we were like, no, just write it up, let's present it. It's had a birthday with us. Like the goal is to get this property sold, and they were actually resistant to even write up the offer and submit it. And we finally got them to write it up and submit it. We negotiated and we got the deal together and closed. After the transaction, we learned that people in this agent's office told her not even to submit the offer because it was way low, like so low that we wouldn't do anything with it whatsoever. And I think that's where the ego and education, everything comes into play, because they were concerned of what we would say and how we would react to them since it was so low. It's not our decision. It's the seller's decision. We have no clue what that seller's motives are to be able to move that
And maybe
forward.
it changed over time.
Absolutely. And especially after a year, their motives may have and their goals have changed tremendously. We don't know. But if you are not even going to write it up and submit it, or you're too scared of the rejection from the very beginning. And with that being said, what would have happened if that buyer went to the next agent and wanted
Put it
them
up.
to write that offer? Like, you're losing opportunities by taking the time, which it's really not even taking the time, it's doing your job to be able to submit the offer of the way that your client wants it. So I think, even with the ego side of things, hey, like, just don't shoot the messenger, let's see what we can do, working with the other agent helps and goes so far. And just the hard nose and putting yourself into it, like, that's not worth it. That's not getting us anywhere. That's not working together.
Well, I think even when you're representing a buyer, right? So like I had a transaction where we wrote, and I didn't think it was like a horrible offer. I expected a counter and they rejected it. So, right, like same thing, I could have told the buyer, like, it's not worth our time. They already rejected it. And that's not what I said. I was like, sure, like they rejected it. Obviously they're going to be pretty firm, but let's throw another counter out there. Let's do something. And I think they rejected again. And I was like, okay, well, now we're getting a little ridiculous. But I was like, let's do one final attempt, like your best offer that you're willing to do. And lo and behold, they countered.
Yeah.
And right, we were able to come to an agreement. So, and I understand it's not always the agent. Like sometimes you do get sellers that are just their way or the highway. But if you can prep them to just be like, I don't care if you countered asking. I don't care. Just put it back in the other, buyers, in the buyer's hands, if you will. And I think the other thing with that is multiple offers. That's probably one huge frustration for me too, is I think that like people, I don't know if it's like buyers, agents get confused or like don't think about countering a multiple counter. Like we got to remember the terms aren't the same typically when you're multiple countering people. They can all look different. So I'm always amazed, like if I have 3 offers and I send out 3 multiple counters and 3 people reject. I mean, obviously that's not great for the seller, but I was like, why didn't one buyer just be like, I don't like those terms, but I like this term? Like, I think that, maybe other agents just always assume that another offer is going to be accepted in a multiple counter. And I mean, that's not the case. So I mean, I had one recently where like we just tried to clean up some things on the multiple counters. Both parties rejected, which I was not expecting. But had one of them just come back with something, the seller probably would have taken it, so I think that that's just the other thing too is, the other thing with multiple counters when you're working for a buyer, a lot of times I feel like those agents just, again, they'll only accept or reject what comes in. They don't do anything else with it. And I think that you could counter less to what you want, or if it's a house you really want, like sure, they gave you multiple counter and it gives an inkling to what they're looking for, but what if you made it even better? So if you really want this house, why don't we counter an extra $2,000 or take off something? Because now we know we're being countered against someone. And I mean, that's worked really well for me. Like when I've countered multiple counters for the better, we typically end up winning because everyone else just either rejected or accepted the multiple counter instead of trying to get creative.
So let's talk about your multiple counter for a second.
Yeah.
Because you guys do it differently than the way we do it. Explain what happens when you have a multiple offer situation. What do you
So let's say we have 3 offers on the property and they're all decent, but maybe price is wrong on, not wrong, but not what the seller wants on one. Maybe the closing date doesn't work on another one. Maybe compensation needs to be addressed in another. So we have an actual multiple counter form, if you will. And what that does is it means you can counter each party separately. So they don't have to look the same. So maybe this one addresses price. Maybe this one only addresses closing date. This one addresses inspections or something, right? But now that means all those buyers know that they're being countered against someone, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're like in like terms, right? So like, for example, I always like the home sale one, right? I tell people like, that's a great tool in a multiple counter. Like maybe they offered more if they have a home sale contingency. Well, the other party doesn't know that,
Mhm.
so they're not countering that. But then goes out to the buyers. They can then choose to accept, reject, or counter that again. Let's pretend that all three buyers accept the multiple counter that was offered to them. Now the seller gets to choose of the accepted multiples which ones they would like to accept.
Mhm.
So again, I think that there's just some misnomers of like accepting or rejecting and not playing anymore or not negotiating anymore.
And when you serve that multiple counter, the other party, your buyers in this scenario, they're acknowledging that they are receiving and that there are multiple counters on the table.
Correct.
So, and it's not saying that they're only going forward with one, right? And it's not saying that they're guaranteed, even if they were to accept that
Still
counter
not
offer,
guaranteed.
right? Like it's a more so served as a notice
Mhm.
than it is. That's the way that I read it, and I think it's beautiful. Like to do it, like it's so freaking smart. Like I want to be able to implement that for us, because it's letting and it removes the uncertainty if the other party truly is telling you the truth that they have already received multiple offers. Now we're
No, for a
right
fact.
acknowledging, like it's written out, not just a verbal, that we have, multiple offer situation. And I think that from a seller's perspective, this really can work in their benefit to be able to drive the true terms that they are after and really help with the bottom line or whatever. I mean, and it's not always about the proceeds.
Nope.
I mean, it could be the date and or whatever else. There's so many
Closing
different.
date is huge for a lot of people.
Absolutely. So this really helps being able to get the best scenario outcome for that seller for sure. So
Mhm.
I think it's freaking awesome. Like when you were the first time that you and I talked about this, I was like, I am not tracking. What in the hell are you doing over there? Right? But this is one thing that I'm like, this is I want to be able to adapt and
Mhm.
our company. So I think it's freaking awesome to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I
So
think it just goes back to like you just like my biggest thing is like I try to tell agents like just don't let it die in your hands.
yeah.
Like let it die in someone else's hands. Then you know that you have done the best that you can.
And with that being said, like I like to call it like the hot potato, right?
Yep.
Like I don't want to hold that potato. I don't want it to be here. Like I want to throw it to somebody else. Like, and if they drop it, that's on them. But I think that the whole thing here too, the reason why we do this, and I'm not speaking for you, I'm speaking for me, is that I'm showing my client that I'm working in their best interest and I'm still putting effort into it. I'm just not letting it die,
Mhm.
right? I'm working for them. I'm pushing it forward. And if it doesn't go through, great, we tried. And what is the worst case scenario that can truly happen when you submit an offer or negotiate? It's
I know.
no.
Mhm.
That's it. That's the worst thing that can actually happen out of it is a no. And I would much rather know that I got the no than ever put it in question of did I do it properly or if I could have done it this way or if I would have said it that like no, just put it into play, throw it to the other party, throw that hot potato to them and let them see if they hold on to it, drop it or throw it back over.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, right? Like you're trying to like that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be negotiating.
Mhm.
So, I think my encouragement to people is just step it up a notch. Try to, again, even if you have to counter it asking, just don't let things just, especially imagine if there's a property that has been on the market for, I don't know, what's in this day and age, like 3 months is a long time, right? But like, don't just be like, oh, I'm looking for some, I'm looking for asking. Like, is that even reality right now? That's a prime opportunity to have that discussion with your seller. I just had to have the same discussion, like, especially in our area, like when you get over 500,000, the buyer pool is that much smaller, right?
Mhm.
So, and when you get closer to 1 million, most people don't get asking price. There's just it's a lot easier to give on $50,000 at 1 million than
Mhm.
it is at 200,000. So I also try to explain to those sellers, like, just know that in this market, there's normally more give in asking price. And you get some people that are like, nope, I want asking. Well, then we get through 2 months on the market, you know, no more showings. Like you just have to have that like reality of if something comes in, we really need to entertain it.
Mhm. Absolutely, and that's where the percentage base goes, as far as like the spread of the 50 grand from those two different price points. But knowing that list to sell price and truly knowing what that is went for you as the listing agent and understanding if you can do the research backwards on your competitors, how far are they really off, and you can help yourself in that negotiation. but that helps put it in when you put it in a percentage manner versus that hard physical flat number, it's easier to be able to explain that spread of the list to sell, and that helps you in your negotiations tremendously.
Well, I think you make a good point about the other agent. That's the other thing we don't have control over, right? So maybe they're, and it's not a bad thing, but maybe they're an agent that's 1 month in and they haven't had proper training. And so you can tell in their counter, like, don't let that, or in their offer, don't let that fizzle the deal. Maybe that's a training opportunity to help another agent. Like, hey, we're going to counter, like, we need to clean up all these things. But again, don't just be like, oh, look how poorly that was written. I'm not going to entertain it, right? Like, just put that ego aside. Maybe they need some help. Maybe they just don't understand the market. We have people that come here from out of the area that know nothing about the area. So try to educate them as to why we're at this price, what we're doing, et cetera. So just remember that sometimes, that agent's maybe lack of understanding or lack of knowledge could be poorly affecting that buyer. And let's try to get through that together instead.
And let's be clear, from a broker perspective, I want to know those agents. I want to know those agents, and I want to help those agents on the other side. I call those people my BS agents, before Steven agents, because now those are opportunities. That's a great recruitment side of things, to be able to say, hey, look, this is what we train on. This is how we can help you, and give them a real live scenario, hands-on type of training. Yes, they're not your agent now, but what if they can become your agent and you can recruit them then? So
Right?
I want
Maybe they
those
learn
BS.
more from you than their own brokerage.
Correct. Be their broker before you're their actual broker, and I'm here for it. So all around, I mean, there's so many different opportunities that it's trying, it's helping, it's making sure that you're working for all. I mean, not for all parties, right? But
Right.
you're putting the goal here is to be able to get a buyer and a seller at a closing table. That's the goal. Willing and able buyer, willing and able seller, and if we have that, we should be able to put the deal together, despite different terms or anything else. We should be able to work together and make it happen and help each other.
Sure.
Cool. Great topic. Love it. So appreciate you guys listening to the Leading Lane podcast. As always, if you have any topics, need anything at all, please reach out. We love the messages, so keep on sending them, and listen in next time.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with others. Stay connected for more genuine insights and strategies to boost your real estate career on Facebook, or check out our website. We'll see you next time.